Shelfware. We've got this 5-tier shelf Premier version from Edsal. I'm going to show you how to put this thing together. A few tips on how to make it faster. Alright, let's get to it.
Once you get all the parts out of the box, you'll have your shelves, you have your beams, or what do they refer to these as? Your posts. You have your posts, and then they refer to these, and you have short ones and long ones. They refer to these as beams. So your long beams, short beams, your posts, your shelves, and then of course your instructions. To get started here, I'm going to lay out two of these posts. So I've got one over there and one over there. I'm going to build it sort of sideways for this bottom part. One thing to note is the orientation of these holes. So the big part of the hole is going to be the top, and the small part is going to be the bottom. So when you're laying these pieces out, you just want to make sure that you have them both the same, with the top that way, in this case, and the bottom that way. So with those two laid out, I'm going to grab one of the long beams, and we're going to start with that. Another thing to note here is this little shelf. And actually in the instructions, they say you can do it either way. You can have the shelf sit on the top this way, or you can have it sit on, I don't know, this way. Here, maybe this better illustrates it. You can have the shelf sit on either side of this tab. So it could be like that, or it could be like that. Either way, the shelf can sit on either side of this. I'm going to do it this way with this tab part kind of towards the top and have the shelf sit on top of it. So I'm just going to line up these parts here to the two holes. I'm going to skip one, give myself a little gap underneath. I'm going to kind of line that up there, line it up on this side, and then I'm going to pop these into it. Here's a pro tip for you. So as you're assembling this, these can tend to slide out, right? Like that. So there's not a whole lot holding that in until you get, everything set up. So as you're assembling this, these can tend to slide out and pop out like that. So what you can do is find a bolt of some kind, and you can stick it through here. And this is just temporary, or if you want to leave it, I would try to find a smaller bolt. The only thing I could find is a really long bolt. You could just use a short little bolt and a nut, stick it through. Once you have this in, stick it through, and it will basically take up that space so that this can't slide out. Stick a little nut on there, so at least while you're assembling it, it will stay into place. Again, I would recommend shorter bolts, and you could, this could be a permanent solution if you want to keep that in there to make sure these don't ever pop out. But mostly during the assembly process, if you use a bolt like that to kind of lock this in, that'll make assembly much easier. I took the piece that I had laying down and I just stood it up against my workbench here. You can see I've got the tab here on the top part. Now I'm going to use one of the short ones. We're going to start working our way this way with the shelf. So I'm going to put that in and let it tilt it forward. So I've just got one of the side pieces in. We're going to do the other side piece. And one thing to make sure is that I got the tab on the top here, and I've got the tab on the top here. So just want to make sure that these are flush, these are level, and that the shelf has a nice surface to sit on, and that this is on the top and that's on the top. All right, now we're going to add the other piece over here. Let's go ahead and do that. Tab on top, tab on top. Now I can get two more of the beams, posts rather, and put them over here. I've added two more posts, and now I've got another long beam. I'm going to put that in. So be sure and check your orientation. I had my two posts backwards. I had it the other way around. Be sure that the big part is on top and the little part's on bottom. So if you put it together and it kind of wobbles a lot, you might check that. That's what just happened to me. I had the two posts backwards, and so I put it together and it was really loose and wobbly. I realized that, oh, those were backwards. After I got it all put together, I went ahead and put one of the wire shelves in just to create a little more stability. I'm hoping that will make the rest of the assembly a little easier, a little better. Once you have all 4 of these beams in place, you're going to want to hammer down with a rubber hammer like so. Hammer down right about here, which will drive these little pegs, those little posts, kind of down into this part, to this part down here. So it'll kind of lock it in. So I would just work your way around, maybe do it twice, hitting each of these, make sure they're locked in. With the first row of beams in place, I then went to the top of this post and I put in my next set of supports. So here's the trick here. Don't hammer these down into this yet. And you'll see what you want to do is you just want the bottom knobs to be in this post, and then the next post will go onto these 2. But you don't want to hammer this down yet. You just want to set these loosely in place, and then you take your next post and you're going to want to get it on there. And once those are through, then you hammer it down and it will lock it into both. It'll lock it into the top post and the bottom post at the same time. Got this all loosely set in here like this. So you're going to have in the bottom post 2 knobs sticking through there, your top post 2 knobs sticking through there. And now that you got that all in place loosely, now I'm going to hammer it down here, and lock those in. After working my way around, I'm now on the 3rd post here. We're adding in this second layer of posts right there and there, working on the 3rd one. I have actually found, so I said a second ago to just leave these loose, but I actually think it's better to go ahead and hammer them down before you get the posts in, and then as you work your way around, just tap them back out using a hammer. Just hit it here to knock it back out, and then get this post on, and then hammer it back down. That way, as you're hammering, if all of these were loose and you started hammering on this post, it may cause the end down there to fall out. So I do think it's actually good to just go ahead and hammer all the pieces in, and as you go back around to add the post, you actually knock it back out, put the post on, put it back in. That way it's more secure as you're hammering on it, and the ends of them don't start falling off. The shelves do seem to have an orientation to them, meaning a top and a bottom. I found the easiest way, if you're looking at, so here's a shelf, I'm looking at the end of it here, you'll see you have, I'm trying to show you here, so you have these guys, these should be on top, and this rail should be on bottom. So if you want this to sit nicely, I think that's probably the best way to do it, is this part on the bottom and this part on top. And I found the easiest way to tell by looking at the end there. So you want this rail on bottom. I found as I was assembling this, or putting in the shelves rather, at the end, that bumping up against it and kind of wiggling it around caused some of these to come out. So be sure and go back around and check, maybe with your hammer, just tap down on all these, make sure that they're in, because some of them didn't pop out as I was putting in the shelves. Here is the final assembled shelf. Trickiest thing I found was just getting these little knobs, into the holes, getting them to stay there. They tended to want to come out occasionally as you're hammering on one end, and another end might pop out, or as I put in the shelves, they kind of popped out. So that was the most difficult part I found. And that's the assembly of this shelf. I've got a review video talking about the pros and cons of this. I've also got a video comparing this to 5 other shelves if you want to check that out. I've got a link to this product in the description if you want to see what other people are saying about it in the reviews, check the latest prices. Be sure and check that out. All right, thanks for watching.